Breaking the silence, Renee Simmons had always prided herself on being a professional. At 35, she had worked her way up from the bottom at Hamilton Consulting, one of the top firms in the city. Her clients trusted her expertise, her colleagues respected her sharp mind, and she was known for handling challenges with grace. However, the one thing Renee had not expected was the daily microaggressions and covert racism that her boss, Richard Hamilton, directed toward her. Richard, the company's CEO, was the classic embodiment of corporate power. He had a knack for charming clients, but his treatment of Renee had always been different from others. He would make offhand comments about her hair, often touching her without asking, or referring to her as exotic when discussing her work. He would subtly downplay her achievements in meetings, and always seemed to think she was lucky to have made it this far. Though these comments were not overtly harsh, the weight of them lingered. For years, Renee had kept quiet. She didn't want to risk her position. She wanted to prove herself based on merit, not on the reputation of being the angry black woman. But as time passed, the tension built. It wasn't just the small, demeaning remarks. It was the way he would take credit for her ideas in meetings, the way he assumed she wouldn't understand the finer points of business deals simply because of her race. She had always been careful, always biting her tongue, thinking just one more year, just one more promotion. But inside, she was growing weary. One afternoon, it all came to a head. They were in a crucial meeting with a high-profile client. Richard, once again, dismissed Renee's suggestions with a quick, patronizing laugh, turning to a white male colleague for validation. The room went quiet. Renee felt the familiar burn in her chest, the frustration of being overlooked, the exhaustion of having to be twice as good to get half as much recognition. But this time, something inside her snapped. She stood up from the conference table, causing the room to go silent. All eyes were on her as she took a deep breath. Richard, who had been leaning back in his chair with an air of indifference, glanced up, smirking, expecting Renee to sit back down and play the role she always played. But not today. "Richard," she said, her voice steady and firm, "I've tolerated a lot over the years. I've smiled through your patronizing comments, nodded through your microaggressions, and worked harder than anyone else in this room to earn my place. But what I will not do is continue to sit in silence while you undermine my contributions." There was a pause in the room, as if time had slowed. Richard's smirk faded, replaced by a confused frown. Renee continued, her words growing more powerful with each sentence. "You call me exotic, as if that makes my expertise any less valid. You touch my hair without permission, as though I'm some curiosity to be examined. You take credit for my work and assume that because I'm a black woman, I'm less capable. I've let you treat me this way because I thought it would be easier to just keep my head down. But I am done." Renee's eyes swept across the room, meeting the gaze of her colleagues. Some were looking at her in shock, others in silent support. The room had gone eerily quiet. "I've worked here for years," she continued, "and I've earned every ounce of my success. And I am not going to let anyone, least of all you, deny me the respect I deserve." With that, Renee turned to the client, who'd been sitting quietly through the exchange. "I apologize for the disruption. But if you're looking to work with a company that values diversity, respect, and the voices of everyone in the room, I suggest you reconsider who you align yourself with." The client, a successful entrepreneur with a reputation for supporting inclusive businesses, nodded slowly. "I respect your honesty," he said, standing up. "I think we should talk." Richard's face turned beet red. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his response. But none came. Instead, Richard stood up awkwardly, looking around at his staff, who had all been silently watching. It was the silence that spoke the loudest. The rest of the meeting proceeded. The client, clearly impressed by Renee's professionalism and courage, signed the contract on the spot, choosing to work with Hamilton Consulting under the condition that they addressed their internal culture issues. The firm would be forced to change. The next morning, Renee's office was flooded with messages of support. Colleagues, many of whom had never spoken up, reached out to thank her for showing them how to stand up for themselves. It wasn't just the Black employees. It was everyone who had felt silenced by Richard's toxic behavior. There was a collective sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from the company. A week later, Richard Hamilton was gone. The board of directors, in light of the client's departure and the backlash from the incident, had no choice but to let him go. A new, more diverse leadership team was put in place, and for the first time in years, Renee felt hopeful about the future of the company. At the company's next all-staff meeting, the new CEO, a woman of color, gave a speech about the importance of diversity, inclusion, and mutual respect in the workplace. Renee was asked to speak about her experience, and as she stood in front of her colleagues, she knew that her decision to speak out had changed more than just her career. It had sparked a movement within the firm, one that would resonate long after she had left. And when she looked around the room, she saw something new in the eyes of her colleagues: respect. It wasn't just a victory for her, it was a victory for all those who had felt unheard, unseen, and afraid to speak up. Renee had broken the silence, and in doing so, she had changed everything.